From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and All India Radio, this is Stumped.
Hello and welcome to Stumped, your intercontinental hit of news, features and debate from the quirky world of cricket. I'm Alison Mitchell in the first ever cricket biosecure bubble at the Ageas Bowl in Southampton. It's on the south coast of England, although I'm of course not seeing anything of the seaside. I'm staying in the hotel that is part of the cricket ground. I'm in a bedroom with large patio doors and a balcony that overlooks the ground. So it's been converted into a studio. The shortest commute in the world. I came out of my bedroom door, turned right, 10 paces past a hand sanitizer unit and straight into the commentary box. And I'll need to tell you this, Jim Maxwell, because at the moment I'm being serenaded by Jonathan Agnew, the BBC's cricket correspondent, who's in the bedroom next door. He's popped out onto his balcony and he's having a strum of his ukulele a couple of hours before play starts in the test match.
Well, I hope he gets to play it on TMS if you get any more doubtful weather. Jim Maxwell here in Sydney, and there's still a bit of lockdown here. Well, not in Sydney, but unfortunately in Victoria, south of where I am, there's a big lockdown as we appear to have another outbreak of this pandemic. So just as well, they're not trying to play cricket. They are trying to play football, but even that's difficult for Victorians. They have to move them all interstate. So the hiatus continues, and I'm looking forward to watching some cricket. And I hope that I get to hear and listen to the Ageas Bowl entertainment with the hum in the background.
Well, I'll second all of that, Jim. This is Charu Sharma for All India Radio in Bangalore, which of course is a city I love, one of the better urban spaces to live in India, despite the current spurt that continues here of COVID in Bangalore and the state of Karnataka. But there is one place I'd much rather be right now, and that is on a chair next to you, Alison, because all roads lead to where you are. And of course, for lots of familiar reasons, one of them being the fact that we are in the middle of a monsoon here in India. And that too, sadly, is something that is a little familiar where you are right now.
Yes, there was rain. I mean, could you believe it? 117 days of no cricket since the last international cricket was played, and it rained here. But cricket still came back. And if we rewind to Friday, the 13th of March, that was when Trent Boult was caught and bowled by Pat Cummins, giving Australia a 71-run win over New Zealand at the SCG in Sydney. Matches 2 and 3 never happened. The COVID-19 pandemic put pay to those and every other international cricket match since this test match got underway. England and West Indies men. England reached 35 for 1. Dom Sibley was the one batsman to be dismissed. Rory Byrne survived a scare earlier on. There was a very moving start of play, that poignant moment when the players and management, across ethnicities, took the knee together. And we've seen it in other sports, of course, Formula One and Premier League football when that restarted as well.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Another big discussion point ahead of live cricket returning, of course, was this entry into the bio bubble. And I've spent a couple of nights in here now. I've kept a little diary of my entry into the bubble, just for you guys and our listeners, of course. Here's a flavour of bubble life. I'm at the Oval, about to take my COVID test. I hope you can hear me underneath this mask. And fingers crossed, it's going to come back negative because I've been very careful over the last week, certainly. Right, I've arrived at the Ageas Bowl. Very friendly steward on the gate. He's just asked me what I'm here for, said that I'm here to check into the hotel. So I'm now being directed up to a series of blue and white marquee tents where I'm told I will have my temperature taken and then I'll be given my accreditation. I have had a temperature check. I've just walked through a small white tent with a thermal camera. I have had my health passport checked and I've been filling out a questionnaire every day, so that says I don't have any symptoms of COVID, and I've now been given my accreditation. So I am accredited and I'm now driving across to the hotel that's on the ground, and I'll see what happens when I get there. Well, arriving to the actual hotel, that's been pretty normal. Entering to the hotel, though, again, is via a small marquee. I had to pause in the middle of the marquee where there's nobody else in there, just me and 2 remote thermal cameras. And then I was faced with a whole load of arrows, all in different colours. So that determined whether you are a player or match official. Here in the hotel room itself reminds you of the weirdness of the situation there, because not only did I come up the stairs following the coloured purple arrows, I then came into our corridor, which reminds you that PPE must be worn in this area. And now in my room, rather than being greeted by the usual, nice soft toiletries, I've got a large pack of alcohol wipes. I have a blue disposable mask, and I have a quite enormous plastic tub of hand gel. I have an unexpected visitor. I'm not sure that he's been temperature checked. I'm not sure he's got accreditation. And he's busted right in through my open patio window. Oh my word. Okay. There's a pigeon in my room. Not sure what to do about this. Who do you belong to and what are you doing in my room? Well, that was, as you could hear, a pigeon flying in through my open patio window. I'd only been in the bio bubble for 5 minutes.
You have no idea the number of fans you had. But what happened to the pigeon? How long did it take for you to have it evicted?
Well, he was very tame. You know what? He had a couple of rings on each leg. So he clearly was some sort of homing pigeon or a racing pigeon. And he was very tame and he advanced. Initially, when I spotted him, he was just perched on the lamp right by the open patio door. But then as I was filming him, as you heard, he then fluttered his wings and actually flew right into the room and perched on the dressing table right next to me. And then had a good old wander, sat on my notebook, on my scorecard for a little while. He didn't want to go. I thought about offering him a cup of tea.
You are being tracked. You're being tracked.
Yeah, eventually I just had to close my bedroom door. I thought I'm just going to have to walk out for a while. Hope he doesn't leave too many presents along the way before finding his way out of the door again. And thankfully he did eventually depart. But friendly little fellow, but a little bit of drama.
You'll probably be in the commentary box next time. What was that like?
Yeah, the commentary box is different again, Jim, and you need a wide commentary box, that's for sure. So it's effectively the width of, I guess, sort of 2 hotel bedrooms. And so across the front, spanning the 2 balconies, is the lead commentator, and then 2 meters away, you've got the summariser, and then another 2 meters away, the scorer. So we are spread out across the front of the commentary box. Only as a limit on to how many people can be in the commentary box at one time. We each have our own individual headset, so the changeover of commentators is just a little bit of a manoeuvre. So when I leave my position, I have to unplug my headset and then take it with me. And when the next person comes in, they then wipe down all the surface and the buttons on the commentary unit before then plugging in their own headset and then settling down into the seat to start commentating. So there's just a little bit of manoeuvring that needs to go on. But yeah, very much if you're sort of in close proximity with anybody in the indoor environment, then you should be wearing a mask. If you're staying 2 meters away, then that's okay. So there's just a lot to think about, and particularly these coloured arrows in terms of zones to where you can go and where you can't go. So yeah, there's quite a little bit to get your head around, but the most sort of natural part of it is in the end just ultimately having your headset on, looking out of the window, talking about the cricket. It's quite nice once you actually get to it.
From the BBC World Service, this is Stumped on All India Radio.
Well, let's wrap up by looking at some of the other stories making headlines in cricket this week. The Sri Lanka wicketkeeper Kushal Mendis has been released on bail after he was arrested for his role in a fatal car accident in Panadura, just south of Colombo. Mendis was driving the SUV that hit and killed a 64-year-old cyclist at around 5 in the morning last Sunday. He's also been cleared of driving under the influence. Now, we're expecting a decision to be made public next week on whether the Men's World T20 will go ahead or not later this year. Jim, we have been expecting a cancellation for weeks on an official basis. My understanding is that it is off as we know it, and I suspect that decision was taken even before the spike in COVID cases in Melbourne, which has caused a lockdown and the border between Victoria and New South Wales to be closed, which is a major development in your country.
Yes, well, there's all sorts of uncertainty about the cricket program now as a result of this new outbreak in Victoria. For instance, can you imagine it? They're talking about having the AFL Grand Final in Sydney.
Outrage.
It's always been outrageous. And they're also talking about the fact that the Boxing Day test may have to be moved to Adelaide or Perth. They're also talking about there's not going to be an Afghanistan one-off test match. New Zealand will be coming here in October. They'll play a test in Perth and one in Hobart. So the Tasmanians will be happy because they didn't get a test match. So all these things are going on without it being official. But you have to believe there's no chance of the T20 with all the restrictions on international travel. Even Qantas saying it'll be this time next year, minimum, before people are flying overseas again on a regular basis. So all those lockdowns that are imminent, if not immediate at the moment, pose a threat, don't they, to the cricket season if they don't get on top of this. So please, someone come up with a vaccine quickly.
Yeah, the world is waiting. I mean, Charu, the BCCI are waiting on this decision on the T20 World Cup, aren't they? Presumably so they can decide what to do with the Indian Premier League. Where's that sitting at the moment?
If you wait another 5 seconds, you'll hear the sound of the first ball being bowled. That's the level of eagerness or even desperation of the Indian cricket authorities. I mean, they are all set. And of course, they're pretty upset too, because this decision of postponing the World Cup T20 has gone on for quite a while now. But I suppose once that decision's taken, the floodgates of the organizers or organization will open and they'll start planning in right earnest. Right now, of course, there's this keenness, this desperation, this eagerness. But in terms of, putting everything in the right slot, as there will be a lot of work in terms of protocols, of course, I don't think the details there have been worked out. And of course, I must also mention that in India, sadly, this whole COVID thing is continuing to gallop. And to my mind, now the government, the decision of the support of the government is going to be a factor that the board may not have taken into account, because if it was waning, this whole, COVID effect, then of course the IPL clamor would have increased. Right now, they'll have to be very, very careful about the authorities, which of course could mean that they could host it outside of India, because there's been a fair amount of interest in the UAE and of course Sri Lanka as well, and some kind of, I think, false interest coming in from New Zealand, because that board's clarified they haven't really invited the Indians to do the IPL there. So there's a lot of keenness. Ganguly has gone on record to say that, the Asia Cup has been postponed or cancelled, which I wonder if it was his call, but he has said that. And the fact that they are absolutely ready and have extreme desire to host the IPL in 2020. So as far as the cricket establishment goes, they're all set. I just think they might have a few situations with the government to deal with before it can all be set in India.
Well, shouldn't there be more of a priority put on staging a T20 World Cup somewhere in the world rather than just an outright cancellation? It's interesting listening to the former Pakistan captain Inzamam ul-Haq this week, who's basically saying that if Australia can't host the T20 World Cup, then fine. But if an IPL then happens in that window, that will be seen as the ICC giving priority to leagues over international cricket, which in his view can't be right. And if a tournament that involves players from all over the world, which the Indian Premier League does ordinarily, if that can be staged, then, well, shouldn't it be a T20 World Cup that is staged?
Well, that's a call, really, that the ICC has to take, as well as Cricket Australia, because, I mean, they're the two, as the organizers and the hosts, and their opinion is important. But I do think it's a different matter to have 14 countries involved, all the players, all the fans coming into one arena or one country, which might be a much bigger problem to solve for than a few players coming into India and no real spectators on the ground, as this year's IPL is said to be. So it's a much smaller problem, I think, hosting the IPL and the World Cup T20, to my mind, of course, a much bigger problem in terms of organization. Jim, would that be true for Australia?
I don't think there's any doubt. So it's all about logistics and the practicalities of staging these events with the movement of people hither and thither, and it's an uncertain world at this stage, and goodness knows what, as Charlie was mentioned, the reaction of various governments is going to be in terms of the movement of people. Yeah. It's getting pretty fierce in Australia, having been fairly relaxed for the last month or two. They're now talking about a limit on the number of people that can come into the country. Certainly a lot of restrictions on the movement of people around the country. So, I think that's a fair point. But I don't know, where are we going to go? To the Ageas Bowl? I mean, what's a good, safe place with the right weather and the rest of it to stage whatever tournament you want to talk about? So this is a theme that has been reiterated for the last 3 months on Stumped, I think.
Charu, final point to you to end with. Quite a strange story, this one. A conflict of interest complaint has been filed against the Indian captain Virat Kohli. This is due to positions he holds in 2 different business ventures. What is this all about, and what has Kohli said about it?
Well, Kohli, to his credit, hasn't said anything so far, and I suspect that he will not till the courts force him to come up with a comment, if the matter does go that far into the court. But it's more a question of having business interests, as Dhoni also did in the past, and then, of course, somehow he squirmed out of it. Business interests in companies that have cricketing interests, and which is the basis of this conflict of interest, public interest litigation, saying that you can't have business interests in cricket when you're still the captain of Indian cricket, because then you will promote certain players who are likely to be, or ensure that in the team. That's the complication here. But of course, in India, this has gone to crazy lengths, this whole conflict of conflict of interest matter, where even some of the bigger icons earlier on, you might remember Sachin, Kumble and the rest, were also brought into this tangle and eventually cleared by court. And of course, they did, of course, realize, and perhaps there should be a growing realization of players around the world, that maybe cricketing business or cricket business interests, or should we say sporting business interests, should wait till you are through your active playing career, because it can lead to, I suppose, some kind of
bias,
the perceptions that
exists,
bias. Yeah. True, and you've got to keep clear of that. So maybe a little more education on that front to all players. But that's the heart of this matter, and Kohli is not likely to say anything unless the courts force him to.
Well, that's it for this week's Stumped on All India Radio. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter. We're at BBCWS Sport and use the hashtag BBC Stumped. My thanks to Charu Sharma and Jim Maxwell, and of course to you for listening. Stay safe and join us again next time. Bye-bye.
Stumped is a BBC sport production for the BBC World Service in association with the Australian Broadcasting Corporation and All India Radio.